Hello, everyone, and welcome to Griplock Foundation Disc Golf's weekly podcast. I'm Hunter, joined, as always, by Trevor, and this show we've got, quite a bit to talk about from just one tournament.
Yeah.
So pretty much all that happened last week was the MVP Open. I say all that happened, a lot happened there. And we have a few different talking points from that. We'll go over the results really quick, and then kind of get into those talking points. If you followed the MVP Open, you're probably not going to be surprised at anything we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'll just go through the results really fast. On the MPO side, we had Paul taking it down by 4 strokes over Ricky, and then Calvin Heimberg coming in third. On the FPO side, we had Paige Pierce winning for her 6th time.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and then when I saw that stat on Instagram, I was like 6 time what? Like I just saw the years up there, and I was like, oh wow, she's won that 6 times.
Yeah, and apparently it would have been 7 had she won in 20. I guess it's 18 is when she lost.
I guess so.
Yeah, because she went like 2014 or whenever it started through 2017, lost in 2018, then won 2019, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Really impressive. But Sarah Hokum only lost by 1 stroke, so she came in second. And then we had Heather Young coming in third. And I saw Prodigy congratulating her on her first ever 1,000 rated round.
Wow.
Which it's unofficial, ratings, but first ever 1,000 rated round. So that's a pretty big thing. And then the final part of the results is the dark horse pick, in which you finally won.
Yes. I mean, neither of the scores were, what was it, like plus 15, plus 17?
I think it was 14 and 16.
14 and 16, so like they didn't do great, but my man Sam Streeter.
Yeah, took down my boy Casey Ganta.
He did get the win.
So before we get
the series now.
Yeah, 3-2. It's
I'm coming back. You're going to blow a 3-1 lead.
Well, we got what do we have left? We have Jonesboro coming up, and then we have USDGC, which can we really do one at USDGC? We'll have to see.
Yeah, there'll be Monday qualifiers.
But do you think there'll be 2 players below 980? There might be.
There might be.
Well, we might have to change the rules for that. We'll have to see when we get how many players there are below it. And then the Pro Tour finale, which, depending on the format, that might be hard.
Yeah.
If it's the bracket format, which I haven't heard anything about it yet. If it's the bracket format yet, though, then that might be a difficult one to pick a dark horse pick. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Until then, the only other storyline before we get into the main storylines is the baller move by Paul McBeth that is showing up to the freaking course on the final day when you're down by 2 strokes with swim trunks ready to go.
Yeah, that's confident.
Which, first off, our picks last week were completely wrong across the board.
Yeah, they were pretty awful.
I mean, I think I had Paige and Sarah in my top 3. But on the MPO side, I had Ricky first, Paul second, I think Dickerson third.
I mean,
I know neither of us picked Paul. That's pretty much what I was going.
I'm pretty sure didn't I yank Paul out of my top 3 for something?
I don't think you put Paul in your top 3 at all, yeah.
That was out of spite, though. That wasn't really sensible. That was just spiteful.
But yeah, so Paul made us eat our words. Finally,
thank goodness.
He was in a 4 tournament slump, quote unquote.
Yeah, whatever that is.
But
imagine.
He came. Yeah, I'm in a 52 tournament.
I'm
slump.
in a slump since 2014 at that rate.
But so he took it down. But yeah, I mean, imagine the confidence. Which, I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise because it's coming from Paul. But you're not staying on the course, and I guess there is one scenario I haven't thought through. The possibility that after his round, he drove to wherever he was staying to get swim trunks and came back. But that kind of just destroys
the myth. You gotta. It's like one of those Bo Jackson type legend things.
You just gotta build it up.
Yeah, we just gotta keep talking about it. Like no, he actually had him buried on hole 18. He buried him there last year after, and then he just dug him up.
Yeah. Regardless, it at least perception-wise was a baller move.
Honestly, though, the more I think about it, it's like, do we need swim trunks to be jumping in a lake to celebrate? Is that extra? I think that's extra.
It's extra, but it's like...
But it is...
I knew I was going to win, so I brought these swim trunks.
That's the only thing that makes it cool,
yeah.
I think.
Regardless, it was a pretty baller move. But yeah, unless he went home and changed. I didn't think through that.
I doubt it.
I doubt it too.
I don't think he would care that much.
We're sticking with he brought him to the course knowing he was going to make his 2-stroke comeback.
Right. Which
you might be saying 2 strokes. I thought it was 3 strokes.
Yeah.
Look at that transition. So there's basically a few different rules calls, and we're going to talk through, I think from...
Pretty spicy rules calls.
most controversial to least controversial is the order I'm going to go with. We have 4 ones that kind of happened all at this tournament, and they all speak to a different aspect of tournament play that I think we can, like, as casual players, tournament players, TDs, all learn something from each one of these.
Right.
Something different.
Paul's has got to be the top one, right?
Yeah, Paul's is the most controversial.
Shocking.
So I'm going to just read you the OB rules on hole 8 before we ever get into this and talk about what did happen, what should have happened, and our opinions on it.
Also, important to mention before this that this 1, 2, 3, all except one of these rulings, like, didn't really have a big effect on the tournament.
No.
Like, this one would not have changed whether or not Paul won.
What do you mean all but one?
The Paige one.
It still didn't have.
But it could have. Yeah. These other ones, like, momentum is something to be said, but, like, the rest of these, like, none of these were like, oh my gosh, we're not saying in any of these that, like, somebody else could have won.
Yeah. They're just rules that...
They're just interesting.
Yeah, they're definitely interesting to talk about. So this happened on the infamous hole 8. Basically, if you don't know what this hole is, it's the one that Paul aced, Brinster aced, both in this tournament. It goes over the water, and then the basket's kind of perched up on the other side. There's OB deep, and there's the OB water in front. So the T sign and the caddy book state this. Pond is OB. Over the string line, 1 meter in front of ad wall, long of green is OB. If OB on land, traditional OB rules apply. 2 drop zones. If tee shot lands OB in the water, proceed to drop zone 1, shooting 3. If shot from drop zone 1 lands OB in the water, proceed to drop zone 2, shooting 5. So, where the controversy comes in is Paul threw OB deep. So he went over the string line, 1 meter in front of the ad wall, long of the green. But long of the green to the right, there is a pond that Paul's disc found.
Right.
So Paul's disc was OB long, but in a pond.
There's also the string.
Yeah.
That's the key point.
And so the string does continue in front of that pond.
Right. And there's land in between the string. So there's the stringed OB on the back side of the island. Then there's a little teeny strip of land.
Yes.
Then there's the pond. Because if it was no string there and it was really just the pond, I don't think there would have been much confusion.
Well, that's the thing. So there's another important part of this is that this isn't an island green. There is a peninsula of land that connects it, meaning that the OB rules you don't treat this as an island.
Correct. So you don't have to make the island, essentially.
So there was kind of 2 arguments, right? There was, and Steve Dodge was there, which is an important part. He was on this card, not on it playing, but he was walking with the card. The TD who has the final say is on this card. So Paul immediately just starts walking up to his disc because he went OB deep. And then I think it was, I'm trying to think of how, I know Andrew Fish was the one that pulled out the caddy book and was showing it to Paul, talking to Paul with it. But I don't know how Andrew Fish or anyone on the card would have known he was in the water. So unless somehow they might have been telling Paul, hey, you might need to play a provisional. It looks like you went in this pond deep.
Yeah.
So they said, it says in the caddy book, if tee shot lands OB in the water, proceed to drop zone 1.
Right.
So Paul calls a provisional, proceeds to drop zone 1, throws that shot. And then Paul proceeds up to, which I think that shot went OB deep.
Yeah.
From the drop zone.
Yeah.
So Paul's shot from the drop zone went OB deep, but stayed on land. So then Paul proceeds up to where his lie is, and it's in the water past the string. So Paul is saying, the TD, Steve Dodge, is there and says, yeah, so since it's in the water, you play from the drop zone 1. Paul basically goes, and you can see all of this if you have the Disc Golf Network, you can go back and rewatch this and hear these conversations happening. It's very interesting. Steve Dodge is saying, well, it doesn't matter. You're OB in the water. The caddy book says OB in water, go to drop zone. And Paul's like,
right.
Well, if I was 6 inches shorter and I'm touching the land, would I still go to the drop zone?
Yeah.
And then Dodge was like, no. Or at first I think Dodge said, yeah. But Paul said, well, this is the same string. And then once Dodge realized it's the same string, he's like, and just kind of his brain froze.
Yeah.
So.
Never a good look.
What I thought was very interesting. So Dodge basically on the spot told Paul, you need to go drop zone 1. Right. That is the ruling. Paul, being a smart player that he is, because I would have never done this. The TD's there. The TD made the call. Paul continues to play out his provisionals.
Right.
To get both scores.
Very smart.
Finish the rest of the round. So one resulted in a 5, one resulted in a 4.
Because as soon as for those of you do not know what a provisional is, you're basically you're playing a second disc. Whenever there's a ruling that's in dispute or you're not sure on, you can declare a provisional, play a second disc, essentially, a second shot. This is in ball golf too. And that way, if there's no rules official, it's a little unique because the TD was there. So usually you wouldn't need to play a provisional if the TD's there because they should just be able to say something and that's final.
Which he did, which is what's confusing.
Right.
Well, not really confusing to me, but
you still have the right to play out the provisional. Usually you would do it if there is no TD and you want to dispute it after the round.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the provisional.
Yeah, that's the point. But so this is unique in where the TD said what he was going to say and Paul still played the provisional, basically saying to himself, I'm going to fight this after the round.
Yeah, so Paul...
Which is interesting.
So Paul basically, like you said, I'm fight this after the round. He didn't physically say it, like those words didn't come out of his mouth, but by his play, that's what he was saying.
Well, yeah.
So he plays out his provisional, gets a 5 and a 4. Then after the round, he appeals to the TD again, Steve Dodge again, and explains look, once I go OB deep, it shouldn't matter where my disc lands, which is a very valid point.
Yeah, because basically he's saying because there's land back there, he's saying without the island rule, when he crossed OB, he should be able to play from where he went out OB there.
Yeah, because it's not an island.
Because, it's not an island. So the water isn't defining the OB. It's a string that's defining the OB.
So to wrap up that story, and then we'll give our opinions and talk about a few things that I think will be interesting. To wrap up the story, basically what ended up happening is Steve Dodge reviewed it that night, and the next morning gave Paul the stroke.
Which is crazy.
So Paul went from a 3-stroke deficit to a 2-stroke deficit. In the end, he won by 4. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
Could have changed the tournament, though, completely. It could have mattered. Now, I want your opinion on this, and I think this is where we'll get into a little bit of a debate, possibly. Well, there's a 2-part question, so I'll ask you the first part now. Was Steve Dodge's decision to reverse the call right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, yeah, I agree there.
So, Steve Dodge, when you get caught in maybe he made a mistake, maybe he didn't. It's tough to say. I don't think he's kind of covered a little bit because the fact that the T sign did say if it lands in water, take it from drop zone 1. It said the pond. It should have said water probably, or ponds plural. That's tricky, but it was close enough that he stuck to his ruling initially, and the right thing would have been to just stick to it, hold your ground. Because the fact that he got moved like that opens the door for other players.
Well, what I'm curious. There's kind of 2 parts to this. One, did other players play it that way? If anyone found the OB water, did they go, I'm OB in
sure
water?
They did.
The second thing is, so what the T sign is relatively clear.
Yeah.
The T sign wording, if you're in water, you go to here. The T sign, as far as the OB, is confusing to where Paul has a valid point. And the way Paul wanted to play it is probably the way the hole should have been worded.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that's not how it was worded.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is if over the course of the night, after they presented it, Paul, the round's over, he presents it to Steve Dodge, and Steve Dodge, goes on the rest of the night. Because it said he talked to the PDGA, talked to the Pro Tour, and talked to people. To me, how I read this, I don't know that PDGA-wise, the way the rules are stated is legal. So that's where I'm wondering if this rule change came in. Because the way it's basically playing is weird. Because, so if you go OB deep in, one spot, you're safe. If you go OB deep in the next spot, not safe. You're playing from land. OB, the next spot, it's requiring you to come all the way back when you crossed over land.
Right. The only difference is the water.
Yeah, it's almost treating it like an island when it's not an island green. The second thing that's confusing, right, is... Sorry, I was getting a phone call and I was confused. Which actually, it's not confusing. I saw people complaining about this online, but the T sign's pretty clear. People online were saying the OB water thing's dumb because that's saying if you airball a putt in the water, you have to go to the drop zone. But that's not what it says at all. It says if T shot lands in the water.
Yeah.
So that argument, if you read the T sign, is completely invalid. But I'm wondering if it was the PDGA that forced Dodge to overturn the call.
Yeah, I would like to think if he was willing to hold, he multiple times held his ground, so there had to be an external force that shifted his mind.
Yeah,
I would think.
That's what I think had to have happened because yes, the OB the OB was wrongly laid out as to the wording on how it was played. The OB playing should have been, if OB longer the basket, proceed to where you last crossed and bound. If OB short in the water, proceed to the drop zone. That should have been it.
I'm definitely gonna get his firsthand opinion on this and see if he knows.
Yeah,
because I'm very curious to know how.
So
that
here's
changed.
My secondary question:
Like, did he like take Steve Dodge out to dinner and like just like slowly convince him?
Well, here's my second question: if this wasn't Paul, does the call get reversed?
Right. That's. I'm saying no. Well, there's probably a handful of players. Yes, I think if it's still like a Ricky and Eagle, whoever. If it's some nobody, not a chance that gets reversed.
So to me,
unless the thing you said about the PDGA, but the thing is, I don't think some nobody
would have made it to the PDGA if I walked up there and said, "Look, I'm here. Why is this telling me to go to the drop zone?"
I think the big thing is, I don't think some nobody is playing out their second provisional all the way, like as if they're gonna get it changed. Like a lot of people wouldn't be.
Well, look at it this way, right? Like if I'm some nobody, I don't have Dodge on my card.
Yeah.
So if realistically,
the group can a lot of times just convince people of what's the right.
Yeah, and that's what I'm gonna say. Realistically, if I'm in this group and I see someone go OB deep, and at least to me, I'm never even thinking, "Oh, he's in water. He goes to the drop zone." That question's never coming to my head because if you look at the T sign, which I'll throw it up here in between us, if you look at this T sign, the OB deep of the basket, it's all red. It's all like you can even see the pond in the red. I'll tilt it so you can see it. You can see the pond in the red.
So it's all the same.
Yeah, so to me, I'm looking at that as your OB deep. You take it like how Paul eventually got the ruling switched to. So if this is my card, I'm playing on.
That's almost like the key thing there is like all of that OB on the T sign is interpreted the same way. Like it's all in that red space.
Yeah,
regardless of if it's water.
That's where if I'm on that card, I'm never even questioning I go to the drop zone. And I'm never questioning if you're on my card and you did it, you're going to the drop zone. But someone on the card did question it.
Yeah.
Which is the right thing to do because clearly the T sign says you would go to the drop zone. Yeah. So whoever on the card brought it up, whether it was Andrew Fish or someone else on the card, was correct in bringing it up to Paul and saying, "Hey, it looks like you should go to the drop zone based on the ruling."
It's one of those things they like. You would have to anticipate that happening, like when you're laying out the rules for that course, and like you have to know there's going to be some kind of discrepancy there. Like people are going to be confused. Like,
well, that's confusing. Where. One of my things I've learned as a TD, and I've learned from playing events, is when you're doing OB rules, you have to make them as clear as day and as simple as possible.
Right.
To ask, you have to ask yourself questions that you're like, there's no way someone's going to ask this.
Well, somebody who's trying to get a call in their favor will ask the dumb questions.
Exactly. Well, like, for instance, I played a tournament this past weekend.
I'll do it too.
I played a tournament this past weekend, and there was two different rules things. It was, someone's first time TDing an event. Neither of these were big deals.
Yeah.
And neither of them resulted in anything. But it's the type of stuff that if what I'm about to talk about happened at a pro tour, it would have been a big deal. So the first was the painted line wasn't defined if the painted line itself was in bounds or out of bounds.
So if the line was safe. And
if it's the inside edge or outside edge of the line. So
usually the whole line should be safe, I would think.
Yeah. So, yeah. And they said technically they were playing the inside line was the line, so the line itself was OB. But we didn't have a call, come up against it because we had someone land with half their disc on the line.
And what was the other half? In or out?
Out of bounds. Half the disc was on the line. So I looked at it and I was like, I looked at the caddy book. I'm like, it doesn't say anything about the OB line, so I'm giving it to you. You're in. And everyone on my card agreed. They're like, yeah, if it doesn't say anything, so you're in. And then I didn't think about it after the round because on that same hole, we had a provisional because if you play in a tournament and you see an OB line, and this is the type of stuff you need to know the rules so that you can fight for yourself. Mm-hmm. If you see an OB line, wherever that OB line ends, it continues indefinitely in that direction.
Right.
So on the T sign, they had an L shape, right? But they only painted the left edge. So it stopped going straight. So there's two people that went OB to the right side of it. So I told them, play a provisional because I don't know what the TD is going to say, but take this spot here, which would be if the OB continued indefinitely, which is what the PDGA rules say, or if you follow the caddy book, it goes this way. And so they played it out. It turns out they wanted the OB to go left or right, whatever it is. They didn't paint it. They let them play from there. That's the TD's decision, whatever it is, it is. It ended up being beneficial to the players. So it worked out great. Doesn't matter. But stuff like that, where when you're painting an OB line, you're never thinking about that. Right. If you're your first time running a tournament, you're not thinking if a disc lands, a centimeter onto the line, is that in or out?
Yeah, you got to expect everything to happen.
Exactly.
That can happen.
And so if you're Dodge and you're doing this, when you wrote pond as OB, in his head he's thinking the front pond. And if he says OB pass, he's thinking that. OB passed. It probably honestly never crossed his mind OB deep in this one random pond way off to the right.
Yeah.
Because it's very hard to get to that pond where Paul's disc got to. Mm-hmm. There's a chance Paul was the only player that got there all weekend.
Yeah.
But there's also a chance that 3 players did, and they might have all played it differently, which is the key.
Right.
Because that's where when the tournament's coming down to the wire, if you have several players who have played it differently, strokes could go. Because if you're playing from where Paul took his second one, you have a putt at it.
Right.
If you're throwing from the drop zone,
it's a tough shot.
The best thing you're getting is a 4.
Right.
You might get more.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But so that was only rules question number 1.
Yeah.
Which I do think it's an interesting point of
that's probably the
if
most
my name's not
one.
Paul McBeth, am I getting that call? Or if my name's not Ricky.
I think it's more like if my attitude isn't that of Paul McBeth, like to actually like pursue that rule change.
Yeah, that's also true. Because like I said previously,
a lot of people would have gave up if Steve Dodge said that.
As soon as Steve Dodge was like, well, yeah, you're in the water. I might have argued the rule more, but I wouldn't have played my provisional out. So, again, where knowing the rules and pushing them to your advantage works out.
Yeah.
Luckily, that didn't affect the tournament. If Paul won by 1 stroke,
there'd be a lot of talk. Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
If I was Ricky and Paul won by 1 stroke, I would be fuming at Dodge.
Pretty heated, yeah.
And then this would be a much bigger story. Still a story, but not nearly as big. Now, this story we do have again, it didn't affect the direct result of the tournament, but it was a lot closer to.
Yeah.
And that is the Paige Pierce / Sarah Hokum hole 9 situation, which I put both of them in it because they were the only 2 ones that actually were active in it. We'll talk about why that's an issue.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, the other 2 were involved, but they were involved in the fact that they weren't.
Yeah. So basically what happened here, if you didn't see, was... What round was this in? It was also round 2, correct?
Yeah.
Round 2 is just full of things, man.
All kinds of excitement.
So Paige Pierce, hole 9. It's a par 4. You throw kind of like up over this little hill and then down onto a technical peninsula green, but it basically looks like an island. And you throw onto that green. It's a par 4. So Paige threw her second shot, going for the green for the birdie, OB off the right side of the island. It was basically deep right of the basket is where her disc ended up. They get up there. Sarah walks up, looks at the disc, looks back at her lie, and said, like, look, based on my vision of the shot, based on what I saw of the shot, your lie is behind this little bush.
Right.
On the other side. Paige goes, what the heck? No way. Like, my disc, it's impossible for my disc to be where it's at and it would have to go through this bush, which no disc was getting through that thing. I would have put myself here, which is like 4 feet from the basket. So you have this immediate disagreement between Sarah Hokum and Paige Pierce. Paige Pierce being the person who threw the shot, Sarah Hokum being the person who watched the shot and gave her a spot.
Yeah.
It's the majority's decision.
Right. Well, the problem is there can be no majority.
Yeah.
Because you've got Kat, who's like tapping out her putt, like not like, oh, sorry, I didn't see the shot.
Yeah.
And then Lisa the same way.
Well, Lisa never.
Well, she might have seen it. She just didn't say anything.
Yeah. So Katrina Allen was very apologetic. Multiple times said, I didn't see the shot. I'm sorry. Like if I gave you a spot, I would just be blindly guessing, which I feel is wrong.
Fair enough.
That part of the statement I agree with.
But like you need to pay attention.
But the PDGA rules say you have to watch every shot.
Yeah.
In theory, I don't know what the actual violation, but Paige could have called her Katrina on something there.
Would have made this. That would be the most despicable call of all time.
You absolutely could.
You didn't watch my shot.
Yeah, that's.
If I got caught on that,
it's a courtesy violation. The first one's a warning, but it's in the PDGA rulebook. You have to watch every shot.
That's just like good etiquette, though.
Yeah, that's why Paige didn't call it. I'm just saying, if she wanted to get real technical and she was having a real bad day, she could have been like, "Oh, okay, well, Kat, here's a courtesy violation."
That's like getting mad at your mom for not watching you throw or something. Like you weren't paying attention. Like, come on,
Mom, did you not see that throw?
Yeah, what?
Sick. But. So Lisa was the only other one that we don't know if Lisa saw the shot or what Lisa really said, but she just kind of
know what she saw.
She went along with Sarah Hokum.
Yeah.
And so Paige steps up to her putt and literally verbally says, "This is about the worst spot you could have possibly given me."
And it was pretty bad.
So this situation, I don't think it's on Sarah or Paige at all. Because I think Sarah was being honest. Okay. It's a little bit on Sarah to the point of, let's say that her disc crossed where Sarah thought it crossed. Okay. You're 250 feet away. You can't tell if her spot's on the back side of that bush or the front side of the bush.
Well, and the thing is, like, Paige has the best angle And like the camera shot that shows her throw, it's pretty much right behind Paige. So our angle was pretty decent. And it does look like it went to the right side of the bush, not through it. So her spot should have been where Paige thought it was.
It was close to the bush.
Yeah, if you're Sarah there, like, and this is a close event. The thing is, like, if this is me, like, I'm always giving my opponent's benefit of the doubt, unless I'm like, yeah, right, like that wasn't even close.
Well, see, here's the thing about benefit of the doubt. The whole thing of benefit goes to the player is if the card can't make a majority decision, benefit goes to the player.
Right.
This card, from what I could hear on Disc Golf Network, couldn't make a majority decision.
Yeah, well, I think that's Paige not wanting to be like that, though. Like, not wanting to just, like,
but I don't even think
down.
It's not. That's the thing, is it's not up to Paige. That should have been Lisa or Kat. Kat should have been like, look, I didn't see the shot.
Yeah.
I can't side with either of you. Lisa, did you see anything? Give Lisa a voice.
Right.
If Lisa goes, to be honest with you, I think it's kind of in between.
Yeah, it was kind of rushed.
Then it should have been honestly, it should have been Kat or Lisa saying, well, we can't come to majority decision, so the benefit goes to the player.
Right.
Which is here. The other thing that wasn't consulted was the spotter, which I know the spotter's not an official. The spotter, when it comes to actually making the rules
that's
call.
A paid volunteer.
A paying volunteer.
Yeah.
Not paid.
Paying, yeah.
Different. The spotter, though, yes, they're not an official. Yes, their say has no, like, if a spotter gives me a spot right next to the basket, my card has every right to say, you never touched and land, your spot's 300 feet back. It's up to the card. But the spotter was also the one with a better vantage point. So, the spotter could have at least been said like, well, what did you think? Hear their opinion. So to me, Paige's spot should have been where Paige wanted it,
right,
which was closer to the basket, or at least a happy medium on the other side of the bush.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say it was Sarah doing it intentionally because there's no evidence of that.
Yeah,
but it's not a good look because, I mean, if she would have put her on the other side of the bush closer to the basket, no one bats an eye.
Right.
Paige, it's a little worse than what Paige wanted, whatever. But where she put her on the backside of that bush, even Valerie Jenkins was like, this is insane. Like, that was a horrible spot. There's no way her disc crossed there.
Yeah.
Because it's even, like, behind trees. Like, her disc would have had to hit something to get to where
I don't know
that
if it's
spot
the
was.
worst spot of all time just because I can't quite tell from the angle. But I do know that, like, especially when I'm thinking, because of where Sarah ended up, I'm thinking she was to the left of Paige. I might be wrong, but I'm thinking she was to the left of Paige. So, like, if you're even if she's to the right or the left of Paige, if she's not standing directly behind Paige, then you got to know in your head that your angle was not perfect.
Yeah.
So if she's to the left of Paige, then yeah, it probably did look like it went right through that bush. But if you get up to it and look at it, you should probably realize that nothing was going through that bush. So I'm not going to say it was the worst spot of all time, but, like, it was pretty inconsiderate.
It was close, yeah. Like,
it wasn't great.
The accurate spot probably would have been in between both of them.
Yeah, it just wasn't very considerate. It was a little mean.
Yeah, and that's where.
Which, hey, maybe that's what we want.
I don't know. It definitely sparked some controversy because, in the end, there was a one-stroke lead. Like, Paige won by 1.
Yeah.
So worst case scenario or best case scenario, Paige wins by 2.
Right.
But you don't know how that affects the mentality. Paige could have easily ended up losing this tournament by 1 or something like that.
Well, she was ticked
off.
Like, that hurts. That can hurt some people's game.
Yeah.
You could tell she was really frustrated. I wish she would have stepped up and just banged that putt, but
she had the right to be frustrated in my head. If I'm a player, I'm not. And again, this is where if I'm Paige, I'm not coming after Sarah. Like, if you're Sarah in this situation, I'm not coming after you. I'm going, other 2 card mates, hello. Like,
yeah.
I can't really make my own voice heard in this.
Yeah.
It's me and one other person. Y'all have to say something. You have to agree or disagree. And Lisa basically agreed with Sarah, but didn't really say it. Lisa didn't, like, get up in the action and look and be like, I don't know, like this, that. Kat literally tapped out, apologized to the camera for tapping out, laughed, and walked away.
That was weird.
That was weird.
I felt like I was on some kind of YouTube vlog.
Like, I understand. I'm sorry I didn't see it. I get that. You can't go back and watch something, but you can look at the disc, look at where the lie is, say, here, what did you see? What did you see? There's no one behind you. You're the last card off that day. What are you holding up? It was very...
That's interesting.
It was like
that happens on the final day. They're talking about it way longer. I think it was because it was round 2 that she was able to move on.
I guess. Watching that, and I watched it several times, I was very surprised at the lack of negotiation, I guess, that went down.
Yeah, it definitely was a lot faster.
Because I think Paige was basically like, no one's going to say anything. Like, you're just going to let this happen. And then Kat, by the time Paige had putted, was literally like halfway to the next hole.
Yeah, what is up with
and
that?
Lisa was standing next to Paige's disc, kind of like looking back, saying, that's about it. Yeah. And then picked up the disc. So to me, this call isn't on Sarah. It's not on Paige. It's on Kat and Lisa. One of them or both of them needed to step up, make their opinions heard.
I would agree.
So that's, 2 different things. It's one with the TD, one with the card. Now we're going to the player themselves understanding the OB rules, which is Simon Lizotte. So this was during round 1. He steps up to hole 5, I believe it is, hole 5, which is, if you haven't watched the tournament, it's a 4-hand hole, or you can go backhand Anheuser out over the water, bring it back into the green. He threw the backhand, I believe.
Tough backhand.
Yeah. He threw it, and so the T sign just says pond is OB.
Right.
That's that. If your shot's OB, you go to
and
the
there's nothing else marked on the T sign.
No.
Other than that it's OB.
It just says pond is OB.
Yeah.
He throws his shot, lands inside the Pro Tour ad walls. Somehow, which this is extremely unlucky, because if this doesn't happen, none of this matters. Somehow, his disc slides between them / under them and ends up on the backside of them. The spotter waves their flag OB. Okay, problem number 1.
Yeah,
the spotter says that's OB.
Well, he paid to be there.
Problem number 2. Simon goes to the drop zone, doesn't seem to call a provisional. I would assume from his angle he could see that he went over the wall.
Well, that's the question: is could he well, he went over the wall like to the right of the basket, so like he had
it was back left.
Okay, I was just saying because like if he knows he's not in the water, then he should know that he's not OB.
But that's the tough part.
Because if he just sees a red flag, and he can't tell if he went in the water or not, then he probably thinks he's in the water.
He might have said provisional, like he might have called it, but he didn't play them both out. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure he didn't call it, but he didn't play it. Right. If that makes sense. So he goes up to the drop zone, throws his shot short, still safe though. Throws a short, safe from the drop zone. Runs his putt. His putt lands next to his drive, behind the ad wall, both on land. He takes that as another OB stroke. Then takes his meter in from the ad wall, taps out.
So is that flat out illegal? Because he took a meter closer to the basket when he wasn't OB.
But he'd already taken penalty, so technically,
like you can't do that. Like if he was taking relief from the wall, even if it was just like casual relief, he has to take it further from the wall or further from the basket.
Well, I don't think it. So it was up to the group. Technically, yeah.
That's a whole mess right there.
It's a lot going on because
yeah, he
took two unnecessary. He should have had a putt for 2 and took a 6 on the hole. So he took multiple unnecessary penalty strokes.
Yeah, and then cheated.
And then technically,
I mean, obviously, it's not like he knew A, and B, it's not like it didn't help him at all. Yeah. So I'm not coming after him, but
very interesting. So first off, yes, this is on Simon. There's no doubt about that.
This is on,
but it's also a little bit on the Pro Tour.
I think it's
that's
a lot
confusing.
on the Pro Tour because you
just perceive the ad wall as the defining line.
Right, they're OB like all the time. Like they're always used as OB. So whenever I understand like wanting to put up. I mean, they're sponsor walls. So like, and do these ones? Who was on these walls? That's the question. Do you remember? Was it just Pro Tour's logo?
Pro Tour logo.
Wow, that's a little different. I was gonna say because like I understand like you have to put these walls up. Because they have like a lot of people pay for them, but if you're gonna do that, you better be really clear that they're not OB. Because I would have thought it was OB too.
I think everyone did because even on his card, no one told him.
Yeah,
and it was a very confusing situation because like the whole thing came down to like not reading the T sign.
Yeah,
but not really.
Yeah, but like
because it looks
OB,
so visual.
Yeah, OB like that hole should be. Like seems really self-explanatory as a player. Like you see obviously you know the water's OB, but you also see the wall, so you're thinking, okay, I have to land inside that wall.
Yeah, if I'm inside that wall, I'm safe.
Yeah, that's like what you're thinking, and especially when you're in like the tournament mode, like in your zone, like you're not thinking about rule discrepancies. Like, yeah, if I landed outside that wall, I'd be like, oh, okay, it's out.
Yeah, the only thing that like might have been like a hint is that there wasn't a string or anything other than the wall.
Yeah,
so the wall
was the wall a complete circle or no?
I think it was like a half circle.
Yeah,
it covered the water's edge.
Yeah,
but it wasn't. I don't know if I've ever seen a situation where like the wall itself is the defining line.
Really? Isn't there
the wall's like on the defining line, but normally they have like a
at Waco? Isn't that on hole 1 at Waco? Is that wall the defining line?
Which side, right or left?
Right, down the hill.
Oh, Waco.
Like they throw that forehand.
But I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's marked as well. Like I think it has string or paint or
you might be right.
Something.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that one. But to me, it seems like there's normally some other form that's a little bit clearer because a wall can be unclear or bumped or a disc can like spike into it or whatever.
Yeah.
A number of things.
That's a whole other topic. Like what should be the universal OB marking? String, paint, walls.
As long as it's clear, I don't care.
Yeah, I think. Well,
I don't like stakes.
No.
I'll say that because I think a stake, unless, because I mean, I guess what I was about to say goes the same with walls. I don't like something that can affect a shot, to where like if you're skipping back in and you hit a stake.
Well, I don't think it's a problem as long as the stakes are far enough apart, to where it's very rare.
Yeah, I guess the wall's a different thing because like the walls are like a physical obstacle.
The strings that are like tight to the ground is probably the most accurate OB line we can get.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah, the string, or I mean the paint as well.
Yeah, but paint can be tough.
The paint you have to define inside or outside edge of the paint.
Paint's not bad.
Paint, I like paint. I like string. I just don't like anything that's sticking up out of the ground, I don't think, as the defining line, because that just brings into too many variables where it just brings in gimmicky unluck.
The point of that, though, is like on certain holes to make sure you can see where the OB is off your tee shot.
I don't mind flags. Like
true.
painting the line using flag. Because if a disc hits a flag, it skips into a flag, it's going... It's not really stopping it.
That's valid.
I just don't like a physical like
big wood
stake where if a disc skips into it, sorry, buddy. If you were 2 inches farther, you're fine.
Yeah. It's kind of an aesthetic thing, too, though. Imagine the USDGC just looking like one big underground dog collar fence because it's just flags everywhere.
That's valid. I don't know. That it could just be. I've never heard players complain about it.
No.
I just hate when you see someone throw what was gonna be a decent shot, hit a stake or something, and just be like.
I think it happens more on the
kidding
other side though, more often where they get saved by the stake.
That happens too. So maybe it all evens out.
Anyways,
but regardless, that was a very confusing situation, and
I don't blame him at all.
I don't either.
I don't really.
It's just
a bummer.
It sucks. But at the end of the day, it does come back to technically being Simon / the card's fault that happened. And he never complained about it. He posted a video of it the next day with a little heart emoji as the caption, which is just hilarious. But he never really like complained about it, came after the Pro Tour or whatever, probably because he knew like the sign says Ponzo B. I should have read it. But in the heat of the moment, who's reading that?
I wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have either.
I probably would have done the exact same thing Simon Lizotte did.
Oh, I know I would have.
No doubt.
Yeah, and I would have. But yeah, it's just unfortunate. And I think that's another thing where stuff needs to be clear. And it could have been that when they put the Pro Tour wall up, that was the water's edge. And the water receded.
Also valid.
Who knows? There's no way to know.
No way.
We never will. Regardless, super unlucky no matter how you look at it, and unfortunate that he ended up taking a 6 when he should have technically had a putt at a 2.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
That's brutal. I don't know how much that actually affected what Simon. He wasn't really in the running, but it definitely would have moved him spots.
Well, yeah, sure.
And it might have changed his momentum because he was 2 down, I think, going into that hole. Few down. He was tied with the lead on his card going into the hole. He could have changed things. They could have. Because, I mean, Simon realistically, he knows that course so well that if he was feeling good, he had a shot at the title. But, I mean, something like that's just a momentum killer.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And the final one, probably the least controversial at all, but also one of the more confusing
kind of
ones.
Intriguing, yeah.
Is Garrett Gurthie, Double G's scoring error. So a scoring error normally is simple. It's the player's fault. They didn't check their paper scorecard. They turned it in. What's done is done. But what's weird about right now is because of COVID, there's no paper scorecards.
Yep.
So UDisc is the official, UDisc Live is the official scorecard.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, there's like an assigned UDisc scorekeeper.
A volunteer.
Yeah, a volunteer.
Not a player on the card.
A caddy. I did it when I was out with doing media at Idlewild.
Yeah.
I did it for Brody's card, one round. But I'm not sure because that, I was media. That's a weird situation. There's no caddies out there. So there wasn't a caddy doing it. So it almost had to be a volunteer or it could have been someone on the card. Right. But regardless, it was all on UDisc. So why that's important is you never really check UDisc for the math because UDisc isn't going to mess up the math. And it didn't here. So I think it makes players kind of lackadaisical in I have you at a 53, which I know a 53 is not what happened at Maple Hill. But have you at a 53. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right, whatever. But what had actually happened was on a hole, I believe Garrett took a 2 and they gave him a 3.
They gave him a par instead of a birdie.
Yeah. So they gave him a par instead of a birdie. So it was one stroke worse than what he actually shot.
Probably was just a simple mistake. Probably just forgot to add it on or whatever happened.
So it was one stroke worse than what Garrett actually shot. So what ended up happening is somehow this was found out and then Garrett's score was changed to be correct, so one stroke better, and then assessed a 2-stroke penalty. Mm-hmm. So it ended up being one stroke worse than what the score was posted.
Yeah, so not a huge swing, but interesting for a couple reasons because obviously, A, Garrett Gerthy cannot be suspected of anything fishy because he was given a worse stroke.
Yeah.
B, the volunteer, there's not a chance he did it on purpose either. I'm saying, I'm sure it was an honest mistake because... Yeah. So the only real question is... how was this mistake caught?
Yeah, how the heck did this happen?
Well, people knew about it. People were posting about it on the Reddit because they could see the UDisc live and they were watching it live. So then when they went up, they were like, well, that didn't just happen. He made a birdie. Why is he not giving a birdie for that? So, I'm sure within a reasonable amount of time of it happening, the TD, people on the course knew what happened probably. People were probably reaching out, be like, hey, this is wrong. But you're not allowed to consult like that, I don't think, for scoring.
Well, because and the whole reason is, so the PDGA rule is you cannot use video evidence of any kind to make the decision on a rules call. Now, technically, if someone in the live chat messaged Dodge or messaged an official or someone on the card or something, that's not really using video.
Well, the person in the chat was, but the person who got it from them, I'm thinking it probably was just a bunch of people said stuff, and then they became aware of it, and they thought, well, we have to do something about it.
But
I think they were regardless of what the rules say, that we just got to change this or it's a bad look.
But it's still illegal, I think, for them to change it.
I don't think they cared. Or maybe they justified it in some way that bends around the rule.
We also don't know how it got turned in. It could have been as simple as Garrett walking back to Steve Dodge and being like, hey, I turned my score in, but it's wrong. I shot this.
Also true.
And, he just owned up to his mistake and then they corrected it and took a
because he probably, he could have been where he saw well, this isn't really going to dock me. He's going to dock me a stroke.
Yeah.
So whoop-de-doo.
So that's the perfect world. He walked back up or something like that and was like, hey, I noticed this after I already turned my scorecard in. First off, no matter what, it eventually falls back into Double G's lap that it was his fault because you are solely responsible for making sure your scorecard's correct before it gets turned in. Mm-hmm. So no matter how the dice...
The thing is, you're not gonna forget a birdie either.
No. And so no matter how the cake gets cut, it falls back into Double G's lap. But I do think it's interesting that my biggest question is, let's say that it wasn't Double G that came back and said, my score's wrong, it should be a stroke better. The touring pros know if they do that, they're getting 2 strokes worse. If he noticed it, Double G's probably the type of guy that came back and said it. But let's say he didn't notice it, and it was from the live chat. Then if it's from the live chat or something along those lines, if your card isn't being filmed, the call doesn't get made. So that's the whole point of why the PDGA has the rule that video evidence can't be used, because we're not at the point where every card has cameras on.
Right. Makes sense.
And once we get to, because I think in the PGA video evidence can be used, right?
I don't think it can.
Because I feel like I've heard stories of
not every shot's getting filmed out there.
But I've heard stories of people calling in.
That actually happened on the LPGA tour. It was somebody called in because it was Lexi Thompson, and this was like a pivotal moment in this tournament. I think it may have lost it for her. She mismarked her ball, so marked it a little bit too far in front. She probably didn't even try to do it. Okay. Yeah. But in any case, she mismarked her ball. Somebody called in from TV, and they ended up calling her on it. And people were furious about it. And I am not sure on the exact rule, but I want to say it's that you can't use video evidence, and that's why people were in uproar, because it's almost the same thing where the PGA or LPGA didn't use video evidence, but this person that called it in did. So, like, where does that line get drawn?
Well, if the PGA has the thing where you can't use video evidence, there's no way that call should go through.
It was sketchy. It was really sketchy.
Because, so stuff like that is why I always thought the PGA, because I feel like I've heard it more than once, but that's why I feel like the PGA does use video evidence. But regardless, the PDGA, clear as day, you can't. You can't as a TD. Like, as a TD, I've had you can't use picture evidence either. Yeah. Because I've had players come up and try to show me a picture of their lie, and I'm like,
don't even show it to me.
I'm like, I technically can't look at that. I mean, I can look at it, but I can't have that be affecting my decision. You just have to verbally tell me what happened, and I tell you your result. So if that happened, and I can't find anything posted on how it got figured out.
I couldn't either. So
to me, like, the likely scenario is that that's what happened. That they saw this chatter, whatever, and then we're like, well, it's public knowledge that his score's wrong. We have to change it.
Right.
But you can't.
I think they just did it and didn't really think anything else through. So.
Maybe, but man, that's unfortunate. And I don't know how I feel. Again, I wish we knew how it got brought up.
I'm saying at the end of the day, with all these rules, the PDGA, Pro Tour, Steve Dodge, all these people are so lucky that none of this affected the tournament.
Yes.
Realistically, like, all four of them would have been like huge. Like, all these people would have been like in very important situations, and things could have gone other ways. Like, they're very lucky.
Yeah.
Because these are like low-key talking points, and they could have been like major talking points.
Yeah, they could have been huge stories. So. Each one of them could have technically cost the person the tournament.
Right.
If the cards were dealt out a different way. So I think this tournament is a great learning experience for a player, knowing, hey, I need to really know my rules going into a tournament as like a casual tournament player, whatever. But I think it's also a big learning point for the Pro Tour / PDGA of like, what do we do to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen?
I think you just gotta be a lot more careful. I mean, there's only 18 holes on the course. Like, how hard is it to like very carefully look at each hole?
Yeah,
I think that's all it takes is you just got to look at each hole very carefully and be like, where could there be
I would like
a problem?
I would like more officials, non-biased officials just out there.
Yeah, well, non-biased, that's a word that doesn't exist.
I guess in disc golf it's too small, yeah.
I mean,
but like,
I don't know. I think bias is always going to exist, but I see what you're saying.
Just someone who isn't really affiliated with the Pro Tour, isn't affiliated just like as a tournament official.
Yeah, somebody that's not in the heat of the round competing.
Like, that should be one of the volunteer spots at every Pro Tour. Is like, and you can take the certified official exam 10 minutes. You can take it as many times as you want. So to me, it'd be like, hey, you have to be a certified official to play in national tours and majors and stuff like that. We will pay for your certified official exam if you will come this weekend and be a certified official for us. And you stake one every few holes. They have a badge on or something that says certified official, and they have a radio.
Yeah, I mean, we had those in high school golf.
Well, yeah, golf always has it, I feel like. I've never played in tournaments, but like PGA,
like even at like lower level competitive golf.
Because like PGA Tour tournaments, they're always calling over an official.
Golf rules, disc golf, ball golf, whatever, they're confusing sometimes.
Yeah.
So like, it's important to have a clear head that can.
Well, that's the tough part is like a lot of, at least in disc golf, I don't know PGA rules good enough to speak to that, but at least in disc golf, there's a lot of, we talked about this last week, a lot of like little gray areas where.
Well, it's like the decisions, like there's rules and there's like a few rules and then it's decisions and there's like a million of them. That's how it is in PGA.
And that's where it's up to the card and, it's whatever. But I think that's where someone who isn't on the card, doesn't have any stake in the game with the tournament, can come in and be like, okay, well, look, Paul, yes, you went OB deep, but you're according to the caddy book that every player got, which that's the end all be all. When you're in a tournament, if you've never played in a tournament, if you're given a caddy book, unless the TD changes that caddy book during the players meeting, that is the official rule of the tournament, period. So whatever that caddy book says, that is what you go by. So when you're there, if the TD comes up and says, oh man, I wrote that wrong in the caddy book, this is how you have to play it. No. Because everyone was given the caddy book. It doesn't matter that a TD's there to change the ruling, which that normally doesn't happen. That didn't happen here. But to me, that is where an official should have stepped in. Paul could have argued it all he wanted, much like Dodge did, but he stands your ground.
Yeah.
Your OB in water. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
This is what the caddy book says. This is how, it lays out. This is how you have to play it. You can play the provisional and be smart like Paul did and appeal to it later. But, I still I don't know if that should have been reversed. That's what I keep going back to.
Definitely not. You just got to know when to put your foot down.
It's an interesting situation for sure. And it's weird that all of this happened at the one tournament because, like,
I haven't seen much of it until now.
No. Well, like, the only one to me that was really caused by a T sign not being clear or, like, a caddy book not being clear is hole 8.
Yeah, the
other ones, like Simon's, it's unfortunate, and maybe the ad wall shouldn't have been there, but the T sign says pond is OB. So, like, if you read the T sign, I'm not OB.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are just...
And, with Simon's,
rules.
too, like, you always have the option to play provisional.
But, I mean, if you're playing a provisional, I just don't know. If I'm in Simon's shoes, yes, now that I look at it, I know the rules pond's OB. But there's no way I'm calling it provisional. Even if I saw my disc.
I still wouldn't have. No, I wouldn't have.
Even if I saw my disc, I'm taking a meter off. But what you said about the cheating thing is... I never thought through that side. No one in disc golf is going to call it because the guy already...
Yeah.
He's already taken so many penalty strokes he didn't need.
And the hole was played as if that was OB. Like,
I think
everybody agreed that way, so...
Misplay of a hole is like 2 more strokes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, nobody was going to tack that on when it didn't matter.
A misplay has occurred if players failed to complete every hole of the course correctly and in proper order. If a misplay is discovered after the scorecard has been turned in, then the player receives 2-throw penalty.
So he could have got a 2-throw penalty.
So he technically could have had an 8 on that hole.
Both for not... I mean, I guess it would have just been...
It would have just been the
for taking
meter
the relief
off
in the wrong direction.
And not playing from his lie.
Right.
Technically.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. Again, no one, that to me, that would go against the spirit of disc golf, like the spirit of the game part of the rules.
Whoa.
Well, it would, because like the guy's already been messed up. So you'd have to be a real big jerk to be like, not only that, Simon. Misplay. Like, you'd have to be a next level jerk to call that.
Nobody felt like they were like being gypped as he's taking his relief off of his fake OB.
No one's sitting there going, oh my god, he took a 6. Like, if he would have played it correctly, buddy, he might have had a 2. So no one's gonna do that. He already got way more than his 2-stroke penalty by accidentally doing that. But if you want to get super technical about the rules, that might have been able to be tagged on there.
Coulda. So
hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. I know it's a little bit more I don't want to say boring, but technical, nerdy.
Yes,
if you want to go that route,
dive
then we normally talk about. But I mean, I felt like all these storylines we had to bring up, and there wasn't really much to agree or disagree on, other than if your name wasn't Paul, do you get that call? I mean, you could debate that.
That's kind of catchy.
Oh, is that the title? If your name wasn't Paul, do you get that call?
Maybe.
Yeah, all right. But some foundation news. We do have the Discraft Hades dropping tomorrow. If you're listening to this the day it comes out.
That's not it.
September 18th. What?
And that's not all we've got.
No. Well, that's all we got dropping tomorrow.
Well,
we have t-shirts that probably went on the site today. It's really hard because we're shooting this in advance. So it's really hard to figure out these dates.
The shirts... I'm gonna try to get the shirts. Will either be up. Well, yeah. No, if you're watching this on Thursday, they will be up either at the time you're watching this or later.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they should be up today.
Yes.
We'll make a post about that at least in the Discord. If you're not in the Discord yet, Discord is .com or .gg.
Not even
/Foundation Disc Golf, whatever it is. I think you can actually search our server now.
Yes,
on Discord.
We're on the
so that's pretty cool.
now.
So if you go on Discord, you can actually search Foundation Disc Golf and it'll come up. And outside of that, we also have just gotten confirmation that we're getting a pretty decently sized Discraft restock. It feels like Christmas over here at Foundation.
A lot of discs.
Not sure if that's coming in Friday or Monday, but regardless, it'll be up next week. And if you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, all of that, you will hear about it. Discord is typically the first to hear, and Patreon gets an extra heads up.
Yes.
The exact time that stuff goes online. So,
I don't know if that restock might be like a staggered, like it might not be.
Yeah, it might be phased in.
Like it'll probably be like, realistically, it'll probably be like Tuesday if we get it in Monday, and it'll probably like slowly go in through that afternoon into the night.
Yeah.
So
into midnight.
Probably.
Trevor will be sleeping here.
Yeah, it'll be a late one.
The final news that I almost just said because I said Trevor's gonna be sleeping here on our couches.
We're getting them.
We're getting couches, and we're going to be hopefully tomorrow, possibly, but hopefully at least by next week, you'll be seeing us if you watch this. If you listen to us, sorry, we'll sound the same. But if you see us, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll be in a new podcast set. Same place. We'll be here. Just we'll be in this corner right back here, and we'll both be on couches. Hopefully have a TV mounted behind us, be able to pull up some visuals, stuff like that.
Fancy.
I'm pretty excited for it.
Same.
So we'll see how well it turns out because we got Chip and Joanna Gaines here going to have to put this thing together. But we'll see what it looks like. I feel like it's going to look fine, though. I'm pretty excited.
Should be.
All right. Other than that, we will talk to you guys next week.